If you're feeling overwhelmed by those 500-page LSAT prep phone books, you're definitely not alone. I was too. Don't worry, there's hope. Today, I'm going to share with you how to simplify your LSAT prep and get a top score by focusing on the major themes across the logical reasoning section. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, some of my biggest breakthroughs on the LSAT came from logical reasoning in particular, when I stopped thinking about the LSAT question stem type and instead focused a lot more on the method of reasoning in the stimulus. Because, surprise, surprise, if you actually take the time to understand what you're reading, solving the question becomes a whole lot easier. This is, in fact, one of the cornerstones of my LSAT courses and my one-on-one LSAT coaching programs, the Socratic review method, where we take the time to slow down, to understand the argument, understand the question stem, and understand the answer choices, systematically dissecting the question, in particular, when it comes to the answer choices, what makes the wrong answer choices tempting, and what ultimately makes them wrong, what makes the right answer choices unappealing, and what ultimately makes them correct. Because you have these traps of encouragement towards the wrong answer and traps of discouragement away from the right answer. And until you know which tricks and traps you personally are uniquely prone to falling for, of course, you may end up making the same mistake again, and that's what we want to help you avoid. And so at LSAT Unplugged, we demonstrate the Socratic review method live in our small group classes and in our one-on-one coaching programs. If you're interested in finding out more, you can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, the cool thing about this approach is that this is regardless of the LSAT question type. And so let's say you hate weakened questions, but you love strengthening questions. We can help you reframe a weakened question as a strengthening question. We can help you transform one logical reasoning question type into another based solely on the method of reasoning in the stimulus. Of course, as I said earlier, it's not just about LSAT question type. You also want to make sure that you're clear on conditional indicators for necessary and sufficient. You want to make sure you're clear on evidence and conclusion indicators. These will carry you far, and if you don't know them, you're in trouble. Now, I know a lot of you are going to go ahead and focus on question stem type anyway, and so I'm going to give you some strategies for this as well. Namely, I'm going to recommend narrowing your focus to the most common core logical reasoning question types like necessary assumption, inference, and flaw, before tackling the less common types that hardly ever show up, like evaluate the argument. Now, why am I focusing on logical reasoning? It's because logical reasoning is now 2/3 of the test. LSAC removed the logic game section after the June LSAT and replaced it with a second scored logical reasoning section instead. This is great news for you because logical reasoning is now 2/3 of the test. Any gains you make there are automatically doubled across the two sections. Now, I'm going to share with you 3 quick wins for logical reasoning you can implement right away, focusing on common question stem types. If you are narrowing your focus and drilling the most common types, you want to make sure that you're clear on necessary assumption questions versus sufficient assumption questions, in particular, how to distinguish between them, how to tell the difference between them. The key is the word or phrase in the question stem synonymous with either necessity or sufficiency. Necessary assumption questions contain words and phrases like depends upon, requires, and assumes. In contrast, sufficient assumption questions contain words and phrases synonymous with sufficiency like allows, enables, follows logically if assumed, and properly inferred if assumed. That's quick win number 1. Just tell the difference between them and approach them the right way. That's going to set you on the path to success. Quick win number 2, distinguish between must be true questions and most strongly supported questions. Must be true questions require 100% certainty, 100% support by the stimulus. In contrast, most strongly supported questions allow a little bit of wiggle room where the correct answer is incredibly likely based on the stimulus, but is not necessarily 100% guaranteed by the stimulus. Now, finally, quick win number 3, recognize that to weaken an argument does not mean to destroy the argument. It just makes the conclusion less likely given the evidence, but still allows for the argument to technically work. Now, as I said, when you're studying logical reasoning, you want to make sure that you master the most common question types before dealing with the ones that hardly ever show up. Of course, in our courses, we still cover all 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, along with the most important methods of reasoning, because again, it's not always about question types. I'm going to give you some recommendations based on where you currently stand. If you're scoring below 160, focus on the most common types, namely necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. If you're scoring 160 to 170, it's time to focus more on methods of reasoning. If you're in this position, you're in a great place to get benefit from one-on-one coaching services. So reach out to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Links below. And finally, if you're aiming for a 170 plus, you want to make sure you're clear on the methods of reasoning that will likely show up more often going forward. Now that Logic Games is removed from the test, LSAC is now testing these concepts more and more in the logical reasoning section, particularly numbers versus percentages, absolute versus relative values, and formal logic stimuli. So if you'd like my help with those, again, check out the links below. We'd be glad to help. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.